Good morning, students. In today's video, we will continue our fourth lesson from the book Vistas, The Enemy, written by Pearl S. Buck. In first part, we have read about Tom, the prisoner of war, and Dr. Sadao, and we also read that it was the time of war between Japan and America, and how the Dr. Sadao helped the prisoner of war in spite of the fact that that injured man was his enemy. So let's once again recapitulate what we have done in part 1. This story is a story of Japanese doctor who hates Americans because of his patriotism. An American prisoner of war is washed ashore in front of his house. The soldier is wounded and has evidently escaped from prison. He could have bled to death. The doctor had no reason to save him, but Dr. Sadao helped him and saved his life. He kept him in his house and at a great risk and reputation, and finally helped him to escape. He did it despite hating the American without knowing why he was doing so. So, let's continue with the summary. Dr. Sadao, he carried that prisoner of war, that is Tom, to his house. He operated upon him and extracted the bullet from his body. He kept the white man in his house. He and his wife looked after him and fed him till he was strong enough to walk on his legs. On the seventh day, since Dr. Sadao had operated upon the young white man, their three servants left together in the afternoon, and a messenger came there in official uniform. He told Dr. Sadao that he had to come to the palace at once, as the old general was in pain again. Hannah tried to cover his mistake by expressing regret and admitted that the general's illness was enough. Dr. Sedao told the general about the white man. Since Sedao was indispensable to the general, so he promised him that Dr. Sedao would not be arrested. His wife, Hannah, had to cook, clean the house, and serve the wounded man. She was unaccustomed to this labor or hard work. She was anxious that they would get rid of the man. Slowly, that prisoner of war started recovering. Dr. Sedao told Tom, the white man, that he was quite well then. He offered to put his boat on the shore that night. It would have food and extra clothing in it. Tom might be able to row to the little island which was not far from the coast. It had not been fortified, the water was quite deep. Nobody lived there, as it was submerged in stone. Since it was not the season of stone, he could live there till he saw a Korean fishing boat pass by. He gave the man his flashlight. He had to signal twice with his flashlight at sunset in case his food ran out. In case he was still there and all right, he was to signal only once. So these were the instructions given to that injured person, prisoner of war, Tom, by Dr. Sedao when he was helping him to escape from that place. Dr. Sedao gave the man Japanese clothes and covered his blond head with black cloth. In short, Dr. Sedao helped the man to escape from Japan. At the same time, he also got rid of the men. So, to conclude, we can say the servants after that incident, means when that prisoner of war left the Dr. Sadav's house, then all the servants who had earlier left Dr. Sadav's house, they returned. General was recovering from gallbladder removal surgery, and in his suffering, General, he had forgotten to send the assassins, and he accepted that he was careless. And he wondered if it was lack of patriotism or dereliction of duty. Sadao realized that now the general was in the palm of his hand. Why? Because he had done his duty by informing the general about the prisoner of war, and general has not performed his duty after knowing the fact. But ultimately, Dr. Sadao, whenever he thought about that prisoner of war, he didn't realize, he didn't understand that why he helped that man in spite of the fact that he was his enemy. So, this was the summary of this lesson. Now, let's have a look at the theme. The Enemy is an anti war story which aims at the deglorification of war and highlights the endeavors of the author to awaken the feelings of the reader against the horrors of war. The author advocates the lesson of universal brotherhood. Service of the wounded and ailing is the best example of patriotism a doctor can exhibit. The story highlights how a Japanese doctor saves the life of an American prisoner of war and rises above narrow national prejudices. He risks his honor, career, position, and life by sheltering a war prisoner of the enemy camp and saving his life. The author has beautifully portrayed the conflict in the doctor's mind as a private individual and as a citizen with a sense of national loyalty. And this lesson also conveys a message, and the message is the author advocates the message of universal brotherhood and highlights that service to the wounded is the best service to humanity. The story underlines the message that doctors have no nationality. They must rise above all petty issues like Dr. Sadao did and make all possible efforts to save human life. So, this is all about the story, The Enemy. Thank you. Thank you so much.